there folks, welcome to Peach Guitars. My name's Jack. Welcome back to another instalment of Around the Showroom. You'll notice, if you've seen the first instalment of this series, that we're starting at a different point this time. Last time was a bit manic. I went through the entire store and picked 5 different items from around the entire store that just caught my eye. We thought it might be wise this time though to just scale in those parameters a little bit. Rather than just being free reign in the entire store, I've been tasked with picking out 5 California specific HSS style guitars. We've done videos like this in the past, shooting out a few different brands, versions of HSS or humbucker single S style guitars. You seem to really like that stuff. We feel like it's time for a 2025 update, and this is a nice way to do it, to actually show you the instruments as they're displayed in the store. This is the Fender Custom Shop room, and this seems like the obvious place to start here because really it is the bedrock of S-style instruments. They're the only brand really that you can legitimately call a Strat. So, I'm going to try and find an HSS, found one straight away. HSS Custom Shop Strat in a gorgeous blue. Well, okay, yeah, this is definitely the one. We've got a big headstock alert. I love a big headstock Strat, so this kind of late 60s thing. With a humbucker in the bridge, it's always interesting to see what Fender managed to pull out, because obviously they're very well known for just having 3 singles. I'm curious to know what this particular humbucker is going to do to the tone of a late 60s Strat, so we found our first guitar, no question. Okay, so that's a very easy start. It's going to get a little more challenging though when we start to explore some other brands that are out on display. Now I've got some in my mind that I want to go to, but I don't know which specific instruments are going to catch my eye yet. So let's take a walk with me. Let's go and find some. So actually, if you've seen the previous video that we did around the showroom, you may have noticed that I did actually pick out one of these Suhr Classic S vintage models, this Fiesta Red in particular. Now it ended up not being in that first video because a Novo came along and kicked it out of its place. So I think it's only fair that we give it a second try. We're gonna pick this for our second. It perfectly fits the bill anyway for an HSS Californian boutique example. So there we go, easy number 2 as well. This is easier than I realised. Let's head in here because there's, again, we touched on this room in the first instalment, and as I said, that beautiful Novo did dethrone that Suhr. But this time we've got James Tyler, and we've got Tom Anderson, 2 slightly newer brands to Peach that I've been kind of getting slowly accustomed with over the past few months. As you'll see though, if you come in, Drew, there's so many different designs with these brands, and these are 2 examples of where they've taken the ball and run with it, and they really got their own visual and sonic identities going on. But right here from Tyler we've got a classic level 2. The thing that I really like about Tyler's is they have all this very clever switching and preamp stuff going on. This still has the mid boost, but it strips a lot of the other stuff away, so it's going to be a bit more of a fair comparison. So I think that is a great shout for number 3 from Tyler. And then Anderson, there's some really nice stuff here. I mean, it all floats my boat, but I'm a sucker for a sparkle. So there's I don't know if you can see that there, Drew, but we've got a sparkle orange Icon Classic HSS. Anderson do really interesting things with their pickups as well. They're all in-house pickups, and their humbuckers actually have a different physical design to most other kind of open coil humbucking pickups. So I'm curious to see how that one fares as well. So that's a pretty solid 4. I'm thinking for the 5th one we go to our old friends at Exotic. That's one of the first brands I remember really taking on board when I came here to start demoing guitars. Let's go and see what Exotic have in stock right now. Okay, Exotic's just here, just around this corner. So it looks like we've got 8 or so to choose from on display. XSC2 is what we're looking for with the humbucker in the bridge, and I think this could be the one. Nice sonic blue with light aging, really dark rosewood board. This is about as perfect an example of an exotic as I can present to you. That person on the phone might be buying this exact guitar, so I'm going to make this quick. Let's get into the studio. Okay folks, welcome back to the studio. So let's actually hear what these things sound like in practice. So I thought it would be best to start with the most obvious of the five, the Fender. So for a lot of people, if you're a traditionalist and you've played Strats your whole life, you're going to look at this and think, why on earth would you mess with the formula? What's the point of putting a humbucking pickup in the bridge when a single coil has worked so well for so long? You make a very good point. Now the interesting thing about what Fender do when they approach their HSS designs is they treat it as, they treat it slightly differently to the brands that have come on subsequently, where they just kind of have a bit more fun with it, I feel. I feel like Fender HSS guitars are usually a little bit more out there, and they make it very clear that this is like some kind of mod job. You know, this is kind of not a standard model in any way, and I kind of like that. It's got a little bit more of a hot rod sensibility, and the thing that I always value about Fenders in particular is that when you're playing the pickups that aren't the humbucking bridge pickup, i.e. the neck and the middle, it still sounds perfectly like a Strat. Now that may sound pretty obvious to many of you, but the reason I say that is that sometimes finding that balance between maybe prioritizing the sounds from the bridge humbucker over the single coils, sometimes that's where designers might make a compromise. With Fender, I feel like they don't necessarily make a compromise, but they still tip it in favor of still sounding like a classic Strat. And the classic Strat in question, by the way, this is a 69 spec model. I was drawn to this, as I mentioned before, because of the headstock. I'm always a sucker for a big headstock. I don't know what it is, I think it's just a lot of my favorite Strat players. Richie Blackmore comes to mind immediately. Just those big headstock Strat tones, I feel like there's something, I'm weighted towards what those guitars sound like. I just love it. I feel like they have a mid-range clarity and this openness at the same time. Now in theory, that should lend itself well to having a humbucker in the bridge, because that mid-range is what you want to make the guitar sound really cut. So let's see what it sounds like. I'm playing, as we have done in recent videos, on a few different videos, through Bad Cat, Black Cat 30. I'm just going to play the amp clean, and we've got the gain coming from a Suhr Riot Reloaded pedal. So let's see what this sounds like clean, then I'll kick on the dirt. So just before I go any further there, that's what I was meaning by the fact that it still operates like a traditional Strat. There's an openness to the top end with these single coil pickups. I believe these are 59 hand wound pickups. They just sound really, really crystal clear and open. It doesn't sound like a simulation of a single coil Strat. It is a single coil Strat. Now that I've got the obvious stuff out of the way, let's see what this bridge pickup is doing to the balance of the tone. So I'll actually sweep through all 5 positions before I land on the bridge. So this seems to strike a really good balance between not suddenly becoming another instrument when you put it into the bridge position. They're quite linear going from one position to the next. I'm going to put the gain on now, and you'll hear the true benefit as to why so many people do this in the first place. Why do you put a humbucker in a Strat? Because it handles gain a little bit better if you're into smoother, slightly more compressed and richer tones, like this. great. I mean, if you want a Strat, if you're a Strat player and you still want that kind of feeling and that tone covered by these pickups and you just want a different flavour for the bridge, this is pretty much the best way to go. I think stick with the Fender Custom Shop. However, what I said before about this being a bit more of like a mod job or a bit of a hot rod, you don't have any coil split ability with this particular guitar. It kind of speaks to that nature of it just being a, let's just throw this thing in here and see what it does. And it doesn't necessarily afford you some of those player-friendly features that other guitars do in terms of coil splits or taps or series parallel and that stuff. But then again, if you just want a guitar that has a little bit more turbo behind it when you hit that bridge position, you're not necessarily going to care about that. So this is a great one to consider. Let's move on to the second contender. All right, so on to guitar number 2. We're going to take a look at the James Tyler. Now this is a brand that's not only new to me, but also relatively new to the shop. It's a brand that we've only been doing for the last, I don't know, maybe 12 months or so, at least within the last couple of years. And a lot of people love these for very good reason. Now these kind of came to prominence in the studio world, the LA studio world, where players were looking for guitars that had more options on the guitar itself that they could use to control their dynamics and their tone. So the most obvious feature of this particular guitar, despite being one of the more pared down options, and that's why I chose it, because some of those guitars have a crazy number of options in terms of different voicings for the pickups and all that stuff, but the thing I like the most is it still has this mid-boost preamp. So traditional in the sense that it has a volume and tone that's global and a 5-way switch, but then you have this little button here, which I happen to think rather counterintuitively, when the button is depressed, the preamp is actually out, and then when you take it out like that, this mid-boost control becomes active. So it still gives you a flavour of what Tyler is about and why players flocked to it in the past, but this particular guitar, which is denoted as a classic level 2, it kind of gives you a little bit of the flavour of a Tyler. It's got that really comfortable neck profile that's very satinized, that they're known for, and a little bit of the electronic wizardry without being too much. So if you're coming from a more traditionalist kind of standpoint, this isn't going to confuse you, or indeed me, I hope. Let's see what it sounds like. So you can hear when I turn that preamp on, you get quite a bit more high-end detail. Not in the sense though that it becomes sort of artificial sounding. It just has a really nice, a bit more immediacy, I feel, under the fingers, and you heard it there on the bridge. So you don't have a coil split on this guitar, but that kind of almost gives you a workaround where you suddenly get more top end, a bit more detail, while you still have the hum cancelling ability of the humbucker and the general tonal profile of the humbucker. So it's a little bit of a different way to approach giving you different tones and giving you more top end if you want it without sacrificing the muscle. I'm going to increase this mid boost thing here so you can hear exactly what it's doing on the bridge humbucker. Super useful. So in this sense, I find that this mid-boost thing is really great because you can vary it to exactly the amount you want, and you can sort of knowingly keep some in reserve if you want a little bit more of a lead boost if you're using it. But it means you can almost turn this neck or this middle single coil into a humbucking pickup. It's got that same kind of tone, and it pushes the bridge, as you heard there. If your amp is just on the edge, it pushes it just enough to actually get a really nice sweet overdrive tone. So I'll show you quickly some tones with the Riot, some slightly higher gain stuff. I'm going to keep the preamp on for all this so that you get the full effect of what this guitar is capable of. So quite clearly, this is the guitar that you want to go for if you want as much flexibility and as many options just from the guitar itself. You can really happily just set up 1 or 2 sounds with the rest of your rig and do everything from here, which I guess is exactly what session players wanted back in the day. Let's move on to the third. Okay, so guitar number 3 is definitely an eye catcher for sure. Tom Anderson, again, is a brand that's relatively new. I have to say though, it was one of my favourite guitar industry memories was going to the Tom Anderson factory soon after we took them on, or rather they took us on as a dealer a few years ago, and going around the factory with Tom was incredible because the attention to detail that goes into their instruments and the knowledge that he has overseeing every part of a guitar's production from inception to it being finished is incredible. And every instrument that I've played subsequently has all of the quality and all of the consistency that I came to expect from what I saw in the factory. It's amazing. This is an Icon Classic. So the Classic obviously denotes that we're going for some more vintage style tones. However, it wouldn't be Tom Anderson if it didn't have their own kind of visual and sonic stamp on it. I find that their guitars always have this most incredible mid-range strength to them. So unlike the Fender that you heard earlier that has a little bit more maybe sweetness and hollowness to the tone, this can still do that, but it has a little bit more solidity to the tones, even on the single coils. And their humbucking pickups are some of the best as well that I've ever played. This guitar again keeps the aesthetics quite sleek, but you have 2 push-push tone controls which give you a bridge humbucking split, and on this bottom one it gives you the option to have the neck and bridge pickups together in the middle position, or obviously just the middle single coil by itself. So it sounds a little complicated, but it's quite intuitive. Let me show you how it sounds. So I showed you the split. Again, I'll just show you these two together, which I think is a really cool combination on any S-type guitar. It gives you that Telecaster in between kind of position, kind of sound. So you'll hear hopefully what I meant when I said it has a bit more muscle behind it. It almost sounds like you've got a subtle, very nuanced compressor in the guitar. Now that may turn some people off, but what I mean by that is that every note just kind of pops out and has a similar dynamic intensity, which does make it considerably easier to play, and it means that chords are a bit more distinguishable, each note in each chord I find. And when you put gain on, the thing just wants to take off. It's always ready, I find, to not necessarily give you feedback, but give you a lot of response. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I'd say this definitely qualifies as being the liveliest of the guitars that you've heard so far. I just love the response to these things. It's something that's genuinely different, and when I said about the Fender, it just feels like it's kind of, they've just stuck a humbucker in there and let's just see what happens. You feel like a guitar like this has been refined and the nuances have all been straightened out, and it's genuinely a different approach to building an HSS style guitar, kind of from the ground up with the humbucking pickup in mind. Guitar number 4, let's see how that stands. Okay, guitar number 4. Now, if you saw our previous Around the Showroom video, the first one that I did, you'll notice that I actually picked out this guitar to use at the time, and then we didn't bring it into the studio. Now, there was a good reason for that, but I thought it would make sense to include it in today's roundup. This is a Suhr Classic S Vintage limited edition. So these guitars, if you're familiar with Suhr and their Classic S, you'll know that that is essentially a real refinement of the S-style platform, and those guitars have all of the bells and whistles that you would want. Locking tuners, stainless steel frets, roasted maple necks on some models. Silent single coil system that Suhr has is great because it means you still get a true single coil pickup, but with a dummy coil that means you don't get the hum. They're two-post bridge and all that stuff. The vintage version changes pretty much everything that I just mentioned. So on this guitar instead you have vintage style tuners, you have nickel frets, you still have a roasted maple neck, but it's much more of a satin feel. You still have true traditional single coils, but without the silent single coil system. Now that alone may just not work for you if you're a live player or you do a lot of recording, but the beauty of it is that you get back some of those fundamentals and high harmonics that you get out of a guitar without any kind of hum cancelling system, like the Fender that you heard first, for example. And you also have a 6-screw bridge on this guitar. So what all that means, to me anyway, is that this is pretty much as close as you can get to the traditional Fender sensibility, while still giving yourself certain upgrades, in my opinion, for a player. So the neck just feels a little bit more refined. Obviously there's no relicking, so if you're into that thing and you just want a new looking guitar, this will deliver that while still having the vintage colours. And everything just feels like it's being kind of a little bit more finely tuned down to pretty much every component you interact with on the guitar. So I'll show you what I mean by the lack of silent single coil system actually giving you a little bit more breath in the tone. Now this may or may not be perceivable through a YouTube video, but you'll hear if I put on the gain pedal, we actually have some single coil hum. Now let me show you why you might want that, why you might not necessarily want to just get rid of all noise wherever possible, because it does add something to the tone. Let me demonstrate. Now, I don't know if that will have been clear or not, but playing it, you definitely notice just a bit more clarity in the top end. It's like there's this little extra filter. It's like if you're used to recording and you have a graphic EQ and you start taking off some of those super high, I don't know, 8K and above, you don't necessarily notice when taking them away, but as soon as you put them back in, you get all this nice air again. And I do find that if you're in a situation playing wise where you can get away with having that 60 cycle hum or whatever it is over here, the hum essentially, you can make it work for you, and it just makes the guitar a little bit more breathable, a little bit more dynamic, and it means that when you go to a humbucking pickup in the bridge, it has a more pronounced effect. That being said, you still have a series parallel option here via the bottom tone control for the bridge pickup, so you kind of get the best of all worlds. There's a theme here, isn't there? All these guitars give you all these options, but in their own unique brand-specific ways. And I really like that you have all these different versions of giving the player lots of different control. Let's check out the final of our S-style instruments. Okay, final guitar of the bunch, and it's this, from the good people at Exotic. Again, a few years ago, on our California trip, we were lucky to go and see the Exotic Guitars facility, and the way they build their guitars is fantastic. It's totally different to some of the other brands that we went to see, but that's what gives these guys their own character as well. So Exotic, perhaps better known for their pedals, unfairly, those pedals sometimes overshadow the amazing guitars that they build as well. And we've had these guitars in stock at Peach for a very, very long time. And before that Suhr came along that I just showed you, these were always my go-to for people who wanted a vintage style instrument, but with some more player-friendly modern features. And it is still a very, very strong contender for that. The nice thing about Exotic as well is they really simplify their kind of specking process. So you have the XSC1, which is the 3 single coil version, and this, the XSC2, just has a humbucker in the bridge. So it's very easy to understand and know what you're looking for. This guitar is an XSC2 in Sonic Blue. It has their light aging to it. I think that's just about right. And actually, I made a mistake there and said that Suhr kind of didn't have any aging to it. It's similar to this in that it's just very light checking. So it's that nitro finish that's just starting to open up and breathe. And again, if you're not a Relic fan, this is kind of the happy sweet spot where it's not pristine, but it's just breaking in, if you like, just warming up. The nice thing about Exotic as well is they always have these gorgeous kind of flamey roasted maple necks with very dark rosewood boards. And they're just great S-style guitars that are still very refined, but without taking away the stuff that makes those vintage Fender instruments so great. So let me show you what I mean. You'll probably hear it's quite similar in its sensibility to what that Suhr was, but it just has something a little different. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. So, as you'll have heard, this guitar has a lot of the same detail that the Fender and the Suhr have. It doesn't really have any kind of other trickery other than that. There's no other electronics going on. This also doesn't have any kind of hum cancelling on the single coils, but of course does in the bridge humbucker. So it's just a different flavour, and I really like what Xotic do. As I said, they streamline a lot of choices for you. They also make some incredibly out there designs, real classy stuff, configurations that you never see from the likes of Fender, for example, just in terms cosmetically. And they're always super consistent with the way they play. They also really restrict the number of options they have for their pickups, so you either get raw vintage 50s or raw vintage 60s single coils, and then their raw vintage humbucker. So it just really simplifies things for you. Not to kind of downplay the kind of nuance of the whole thing, but really, if you want a classic style instrument that looks a certain way, is in a certain colour, and you don't really want to think much more beyond that, they've got you covered. Now that's not to say that it's just the simple option, because there's a lot that goes on behind their designs, but again, it's just a little bit of a different takeaway if you can't really be bothered with going through millions of different options and having to learn new switching configurations and stuff like that. So just another really solid choice. So there we go, folks, 5 more guitars from around the showroom, the California edition. Now, I thought, as I said earlier on, it would just be interesting to maybe close down the parameters a little bit on this series. I don't know. Let me know what you think, because before we just went wide open, went trawling around the whole store. Do you prefer that, or do you prefer this slightly more focused view of different guitars? Let us know down in the comments below, and indeed, let us know your favourite of the 5 that I selected. If you want to find out any more information about any of these 5 guitars, or indeed anything else that we stock here at the shop, click the link down in the description below and head to peachguitars.com, where you'll find out everything you could want to know. Thanks very much, as always, for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.